We'll give everybody a couple of minutes to jump on. I guess y'all didn't hear the first time. We're obviously Coach Robbie Wilson, Coach Mandi Balduf, episode 5 of Turn by Turn.
Do not adjust your Facebook.
We are actually this good looking. Just our normal face, nothing wrong. I must ask you a couple of questions. We're going to give everybody a couple of minutes to jump on, and then we will go ahead and get started. So if you are already on, please make sure that you go ahead and comment, let us know. Otherwise, we'll give it a couple of minutes and go ahead and get started. Hopefully the clarity on the video gets a whole lot better. All right, let's try to get buckled in there. This ain't gonna, because that's not going to work. You see this? Is your clarity like that?
Yeah, now it is.
Yeah, it's blurry and ruined.
Why is it doing? Can't you rotate it
I
within
don't know what else
Facebook
you
itself?
mess it up.
Isn't it?
Hey, camera operator, it's not going to work like this. Jen, you on yet? If you're on, go ahead and comment and let me know. And the rest of y'all, as you're clicking on, go ahead and comment and let us know. Let us know where you're watching from. We got a couple of quick topics that we're going to cover here in a minute that, what would you say, sensitive?
A little bit.
A little bit sensitive. And then we'll go ahead and jump into the academic side of things with Jen Henson. So I guess we can take the mask off. I don't always wear a Mario mask, but when I do, I'm going to turn by turn.
Now you got my good side.
All right, guys. Hey, we'll go ahead and get started. I appreciate all y'all being on. Like I said, make sure that you go ahead and comment. Let us know you're on. Let us know where you're watching from. We got a couple, like we said, sensitive topics that we wanted to talk about on episode 5. We're not going to take a ton of time on them because the bread and butter, what we're bringing in here in just a little bit, is what's going to be huge. It is what we feel like is the most important. I think the most important topic we wanted to make sure and cover here in the beginning is face masks. Those of y'all that did not see it, it still cracks me up. April Fool's being just a few days ago, 3 days ago? Sunday. I believe it was ASA USA Softball that posted it, but they posted this as of August 2018, all 12 and 14, blah, 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 are going to be required to wear face masks. And
People went crazy. People went nuts.
It was like those of us that, I guess, I don't want to say it was common sense, but I knew that was a good one, but there were people that were literally flipping a lid on each other about face masks and, oh, we'll never play in your stuff again and blah, blah, blah. And I kudos to, I think it was ASA USA Softball Facebook page, but it was hilarious. And I had some of my prospects' dads text to me, oh my gosh, check all this out. Because people were making a booty of themselves. So it kind of sparked my mind going, of course, because while there was humor in that, that's probably something we get asked by every one out of every 5 prospects. And while I may have my personal beliefs, Mandi may have her personal beliefs, they're probably pretty close to the same. Here's the thing. Face masks are never going to be made mandatory. It's never going to happen. It would be kind of like saying, from now on, you have to have Velcro on your cleats because if your shoestrings are too long and they get caught in your cleat, it's a safety issue. It's never going to be made mandatory. And here's the thing, and please don't hear this wrong, but a lot of people, and I understand there are some parents, and I actually know one that I'm really close with, that her daughter's a pitcher, she wasn't wearing a face mask, was drilled right in the head, it cracked her skull. She's a very strong advocate for it being mandatory. Here's the thing. And the same thing I told her, and we're close enough friends that I could be straight up with her. It's never going to be mandatory, but if it was that big of an issue, she should have been wearing one in the first place. Mm-hmm. And, you know, here's the biggest thing. To this day, and Mandi can tell you from a college coach's side, in recruiting wise, to this day, I've not had a college coach tell me I'm not going to recruit that pitcher because she's wearing a mask. I've never heard them talk negatively about a pitcher wearing a mask. Were you the same way?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't matter to me if she wore a mask. There's a whole lot of different reasons. I mean, I had outfielders that wore masks, and I know that gets made fun of, but this kid had concussions, and so doing all that we can. I mean, I grew up and played in a day and age where we didn't have masks on our batting, you know. I didn't wear shin guards and elbow guards, and I don't know how I survived. But with
drinking out of water hoses.
Yeah, how did I live? You know, seeing it now, the technology's so hot, these bats. I mean, if I had a daughter playing, she's wearing a face mask. If she's playing a corner, I don't want kids to rely on it and think that that's going to be the end-all, be-all. I mean, you do have a glove on your hand, so use it. But, you know, don't be scared. Let's not use that as a way to, you know what I mean?
Oh, and that kind of drives us to our next point, which is the question that we always get asked. And, you know, and let me reiterate the fact, it's never going to be made mandatory. And everybody who is so strongly about making it mandatory, here's the thing. A lot of times, and not all times, a lot of times the people who are so strongly about it being mandatory, stop worrying about what everybody else is doing and worry about your daughter. I had an interview with a 2021 catcher, and the kid, one of my prospects now, the kid's a stud. But when she's not catching, she plays the corners. And they asked in the interview, you know, so when she's not catching, is her wearing a face mask going to be a detriment to her? And I had to be straight up with her. Hey, look, me personally, pitchers and corners, I have no problem with. I'm going to be straight up with you, though. I have had numerous college coaches, and I say numerous meaning there's been a lot of them, but there's also a lot more that have turned around and said, tell her to get that daggone face mask off. That's what her glove's for. And here's the thing, that's his opinion, that's her opinion. It's neither right nor wrong, it's his opinion. So, and I'm not agreeing or disagreeing. What I'm telling you is, as I told her, you know, hey, if you can get used to playing without the mask in case a coach you're wanting to play for wants you to, that would be great. Well, then Dad emphasized about her having reconstructive surgery or you know, just about, and she actually did get hit with a line drive. And, you know, anyways, long story short, at that point, that's a very easy explanation when the coach says, why is she wearing a daggone face mask playing first base?
Because I broke my nose twice.
Yeah, good. Yeah,
I had a concussion, so.
So it was a very, now here's the next level to that. I strongly encourage middle infielders, outfielders, if you are dead set on wearing a mask, do whatever you're going to do. Understand, know when a college coach is asked on a video or asked in an article or even at a Q&A at a recruiting camp, most of them are not going to say, I'm totally against face masks. You know, they're going to take the path of least resistance and they're going to give the popular answer. So, but what I can tell you in my time of recruiting, what I've seen, I've never heard a college coach be negative about a pitcher with a face mask. Only sometimes, probably 10% of the time, have I heard them say something about a corner with a face mask. Middle infielders, outfielders, that is where a lot of the negativity about wearing a face mask is going to come from. Because your amount of time, yeah, it's still not a ton of reaction time, but it's a whole lot more than when you're standing, 20 feet from the hitter? Right. You know, so long story short to that, if you're a shortstop and you are dead set on wearing a mask, I'm not saying you're not going to get recruited because you wear a mask at shortstop. What I'm saying is accept the fact that if this particular coach wants his team to be non-face mask and wants his middles to be non-face mask, that coach probably ain't going to recruit you. It doesn't mean you have to change what you're doing. You just have to accept that.
Mm-hmm.
Like Mandi always says, you do you.
You do you.
Stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane. You do you, and let it be.
If that's a non-negotiable, then clearly you don't want to play for that coach. If that's, I mean, what kid, you can go to any field these days and what kid isn't wearing a face mask? I mean, it's just kind of a thing to do. Although I find it interesting that it doesn't happen in baseball, but that's a whole other, I think we can.
Yeah, probably. We'd be here another hour. So, in addition to that, the cherry on top there, the cherry on top is I want you to make sure to pay attention to this. I mean no disrespect to any of the younger classes, but the 10U and 12U that try to get the parents' favor by saying we are mandatory straight face masks for every position. That is a very bad precedent. It is never going to be mandatory at the upper levels, and you're actually handicapping some of those kids. I will use my daughter as an example. My 12-year-old, who has played on a couple of teams here in the past, that required every defensive player to wear a face mask. Now here's my daughter, who's an outfield second baseman. On top of the fact, my daughter doesn't like a face mask. She hates it. And when she would play up and play with some of the bigger girls, and I would make her wear it because here's this kid my size hitting a rocket at her. Yeah, you're wearing that face mask. She hates it. She actually tells me, hey, sometimes I can't see with it, Dad. So point being, it's a personal choice. That's not a team choice. That's not something a coach needs to be implementing. That's not something a coach needs to be judging. It needs to be, if you want to wear a face mask, you wear a face mask.
I think it's a family decision and a player decision.
Yes.
I mean, when they entered, it was kind of in the middle, I think my early years of my recruiting when they started wearing face masks to hit. I mean, putting one on, it's just a different visual. If you didn't grow up wearing that, it's a very difficult transition. So to make somebody do it, like a pitcher's, yes. Corner, yeah. But that's a family decision and a player decision.
And so we will leave it at that. I know if any of y'all have any comments about that, feel free to throw it in the comments. Understand that is such a sensitive topic that I'm just going to be straight up with you. You're not going to get Mandi or myself or any of our scouts even to make a definitive, to jump to one side of the fence or the other. All you're going to get from us is basically exactly what we just said. That's not a coach choice. That's a kid and a parent choice. That's a family choice. Your circumstances and how you feel needs to dictate that. The next real, which we're not going to really go super in depth about it, but the next really sensitive topic, we're going to use the word sensitive topic, is high school softball. And it's not high school softball, it's high school softball. Everybody knows coast to coast that if you are the kid that plays for an elite travel team, but you're in a small town high school, or you're in a small town and go to a small town high school, there's a possibility you may be one of the only 2 travel ball players on that team. And because of that,
you get to play every position.
Exactly. And I mean, to the point to where here's a frequency that I've seen, and I know it's been going on longer than that, but I've seen it really heavily over the last 4 to 5 years, is all of a sudden this elite player all of a sudden has to pitch. And a kid who's never pitched before, she's an outfielder, she's one of them's a shortstop, one of them's a third baseman, they've never pitched before. But because they're so athletic, and because they've played travel ball all their life, I get the high school coach had to figure something out. Somebody had to pitch. But here's where it perturbs me.
Yeah.
Is then all of a sudden you have these players who are high-level recruits, I'm going to be honest, high-level recruits, that regardless of what type of recruit, these are kids who are wanting to play this not just for the next 4 years during high school, but they want to play 4 more, at least. And all of a sudden, these kids who have never pitched before are all of a sudden having to pitch. And I'm not talking about defending it and being ready and everything. I'm talking about this unnatural motion. And one by one, over the last 4 to 5 years, I've had 6 different prospects of mine that have ended up tearing, and it's sore, tearing something in their shoulder. I've got another handful of them that are having shoulder issues. Some of them, they're committed, and their coach, has been a little bit more lax about it. Some of them, the key factor there, some of them have a little bit more what do you want to say, a little bit more juice because there's 2 or 3 others that have never pitched before that are splitting time. But there's some of these 1 and 2A high schools that this kid is turning around, and if it's a doubleheader, they're throwing 14 innings. And then they're coming back the next day and throwing 7 innings. And then all of a sudden, hey, I've not only got a torn labrum, but a torn subscapularis teres minor. I'm going to be out. And sometimes it's not just that they're going to be out. They're not just going to be out towards the end of the high school season. They're going to be out during the hot part of their recruiting season. They're going to be out for summer and most of fall. And once they do come back, all of a sudden this 65 overhand drops down to a 50, 52. And we all know injuries like that are not things that you rush.
Right. So what do we do?
Yeah. And so that's something you've seen. You were telling me earlier, you've seen progress over the years, right?
Yeah, I think you get coaches at the high school level that they do it for a like of the game, and it's an extra some income, and they don't necessarily know all the ways to train, and they just kind of, oh well, you're the best travel ball player, you should know. But I think at that point, I think what you do, I would advise my kids to have a conversation. That player needs to have a conversation with that coach. I think it does not need to start with the parents approaching it, but it's a great learning experience for that player to learn how to deal with confrontation or expressing themselves like, look, I'm willing to do anything for the team, but there's got to be a boundary here. Like, I'm not a pitcher. That's not something you can just, hey, go wing it. That's unsafe for the kid, and I think at that point, once it becomes a safety issue, you might have to walk.
And so, like you were telling, exactly like you told me earlier, how do you know when it's too much? What do mom, dad, kid, how do they approach that?
I think first it starts with the kid. I think you teach your kid how to have that conversation with the coach. If it doesn't go anywhere from there, then maybe asking the AD to be a mediator, and then getting mom and dad involved. But if you take care of it for them, the kid will never learn how to handle this type of situation.
And I can't say any better than that. That's when I brought it up to Mandi, to be honest with you, because it's happening with another prospect of mine, and the kid's crying because she's in so much pain. And the coach made and I like this guy. Keep in mind, I like this guy, but the coach made the comment to her, if you can't do what I need you to do, then get off the field, blankety blank field. And I went to Mandi, hey, I've seen a higher frequency of this happening. What have you seen? How do you handle it? And it's exactly like she said. The first thing you got to do, the kid's got to handle it, and then you got to start taking other steps. But the bottom line, if you're in the thought that not playing high school ball or having to leave your high school team is going to jeopardize your future or anything, completely false. Everything is circumstance given. Now, don't get me wrong, if you're not playing high school ball and you could be, the question's going to get asked. Mm-hmm. It's going to get asked. If it's, I really didn't like him, he's really mean, he made us run with weights in our hands, he made us do bleachers with weights in our hands, that stuff's not going to fly, being straight up honest with you. But when there are justifiable reasons as to why you're not playing, and it ends up being your health, your safety, and I'm not saying fabricate, oh, my health was in danger. Right. But these types of situations where you're doing those things and you're putting yourself in jeopardy, and for nothing to go get beat 18-0 on a daily basis,
it's just not smart for the long run, for the return on the investment. That just is not smart.
Bottom line.
Let's get to the fun stuff.
Fun stuff. I'm not super thrilled about having 2 Bengal fans on, but we'll actually be adding Jen right now. Those of y'all that don't know, Jen, if you can go ahead and request it. Those of y'all that don't know, Jen Henson is, an ACT, SAT prep, prep. Is it Jen you want?
I am.
There we go.
Hi.
There we go.
Born into it, that's right.
Decided to dress up for you at the beginning of the show. Mandi was a little upset that she didn't bring her baby.
I had the perfect mask for that. I wasn't prepared.
Next time.
So, Jen, tell us a little bit about tell us a little bit about you. Like, tell us a little bit about you and kind of how Jen Henson, ACT Prep came to be.
Well, so I'm at football practice right now, which you can see in the back with my son. And happy to be doing this too. So I'm an English teacher and a teacher for 22 years. And 8 years ago, had a young man with a full ride for football who did not have the ACT score to be NCAA eligible at any division. And I helped that young man, which then he went on to play at the University of Louisville and then had a career with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And that just prompted in me a quest to learn that test, help more students. And I helped so many and just got so busy that this is what I do full time now. Including student athletes reach their testing goals.
Gotcha. Well, and I know, what was it? It was a couple of years. I mean, I knew that you had been doing a whole lot of other stuff, and I knew you had connections in a whole lot of other areas, but I remember that, I guess that kind of ages us in our careers, but I remember that time frame where it was the big decision, because you were also the teacher. You were not just teaching it, you were living it, and it was, do I do this to help more people, and luckily, some of my prospects' parents and, themselves about I'm curious, whether it's scout, whether it's, test prep, I believe we're frozen. Okay.
Y'all came back up. Yeah.
So one of the things that I know is we are frozen again. Jen, can you hear us?
I can.
Okay. Is we all know those kids that overachieve. We know, they're overloaded with stuff. You don't know where they find the time to do stuff. They maintain a 4.55, with all AP courses on top of playing 5 sports, on top of volunteering and all this other stuff, and they do everything else perfect. But then when it comes to standardized testing and it comes to, the ACT or the SAT, they can't get it. And I'm not saying I excel in every area of life, but, I was one of those kids that, I had no problem. To get a qualifying ACT. A buddy of mine that never studies a day in his life, has a 2.3 GPA, walks in, takes a test, and makes a 32. Why is that?
Well, I think that some students just aren't familiar with the layout of the test. It's something they've never seen. It's different than anything they've ever seen. And that good student who you were describing, they think this is going to be easy. And they go in really not knowing anything about that test. And I think that that's a shame. We wouldn't send our children to go get their driver's license without practicing driving. And I mean, that would be ludicrous in our minds. So these kids that take that test, they're just kind of shocked. I think that they haven't sat still for 4 hours in a long time. They haven't not looked at Instagram every 5 minutes and kind of broken up their studying. I think that students are studying in a totally different way than we did or their parents did, where they have easy hours without that. I mean, that to them is very weird. So they have to learn how to attack the test.
So essentially, in layman's terms, they've excelled at everything else, and they're thinking that this isn't going to require as much preparation as it truly does.
Right.
Gotcha. So would you agree, some of those others that, they may be lower GPA kids and not necessarily driven kids that go take the test and just end up hitting it out of the park, is that just the simple fact of their nonchalant way of being, that they're not overanalyzing the test?
That, or maybe somebody has told them how to win or how to take the test that the other kid doesn't. Or some kids are just naturally good test takers. And some students aren't, some 4.0s, those kids are struggling, and they might be doing test corrections to get those good grades, and they might be doing things behind the scenes, and the ACT or SAT, it's one shot on that Saturday. And so, students who have an away ball game the night before, they get home at midnight and then get up and take that test. That's not ideal test conditions, but you don't want to miss that test either, because there are only certain months, and if you miss an opportunity, then you have to wait 2 more months to take it again.
Jen, I get the question all the time, like, how early is early enough for this test?
This is a tough question, but I think in early recruited sport, which, we're talking softball, and one of your NSR girls who I helped, she was young. I mean, she was really young. And so to ideally, the kid would have finished Algebra 2 before they take it. Ideally. And that for most students is, sophomore, junior year. So that's ideal. However, and you guys could speak more about this, there are some college coaches that want to have that initial test score before, that happens.
That kind of drives us into the next question, which was, and I know I went back and forth with you about that, is if you look at the 7th and 8th graders that over the last 3 years, and I know it's not everybody, but as I sat down and looked at all, if I had a 7th or an 8th grader commit, the odd part about it was every one of them that were getting loaded up with offers had an ACT score. I saw she already had. Oh, it's not the highest score the kid's going to get, but what did it tell the coach? Well, okay, she'll qualify. And so, I know I actually talked to a parent about it this afternoon, where in the last 2 days, I've had 5 different D1 programs call me saying, hey, I need a 2018 pitcher. And I'm like, you mean the kid that graduates in a month and a half? And then they tell me, hey, we gave this kid enough time, and she never got the ACT we needed. And, so now she's going to have to go another route. Now, we're left trying to figure things out. And a couple of those coaches ended up making the statement, Robbie, I'll never offer another kid like that. I'll never do that if they don't at least have a baseline to tell me they're going to qualify. And so I know, obviously, the more courses that they've taken that'll be on the test, the better. But have you worked with the 7th and 8th graders in tutoring them for the test?
So I've worked with one group of 7th graders. It was about 12 kids collectively. And then I worked with the other youngest was a 9th grader. So it would be very possible to get a score that would qualify a student without having that algebra 2. Because
yeah, I have that she scored a 19 in the 7th grade and just retook it and scored a 24, and she's only in 8th grade.
Yeah. And I mean, Genevieve Obstack is a prime example. The 21 pitcher that's committed to Syracuse, that I started working with her the second week of her 7th grade year. But when they sent me, obviously the kid's 5'10", already throwing 59, and this, that, and the other. But then sends it to me and has over a 4-point and already had, I think she already had a 24 or 26 on ACT. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I just like most parents, I'm like, no, you're talking about the Duke tip, not the actual ACT. And so then, no, it's the actual ACT, you know. And of course, anybody who knows, you know, the OSAC, rolling out other divisions, but really with the flexibility that the NAIA provides academically, only having to have two of those components, really what we're talking about is the NCAA Division 1 and 2 sliding scale. You know, so can you explain that a little bit in terms of, you know, a lot of people get confused when they look at the ACT score and it says 3.55 GPA or above, and they have to have a 36 on the ACT. But then it explains that it's without this component, and then you add these 3. Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So I wrote down some numbers, so I have some notes. So, you know, and I have this information that I can send you, Robbie and Mandy, as well, in a PowerPoint that you can reference. I'm sure you already have it, but sometimes it's nice to have that visual. So the sliding scale for Division 1, the higher your GPA, the lower your quality point total can be. So what's confusing for parents is for say you have to get a 20 or you have to get a 22, but they might talk about the points added together to make that. So they'll take English and they'll take math, and they'll take the reading score, and they'll take the science score. And let's say that the student had a 20 on each of those, which would, of course, be a 20 composite, but that's really 80 quality points.
The composite, right? The composite score?
Well, the composite is a 20, but then they'll add those 4 scores together to get that big number. So sometimes families will see and say, how is my student supposed to get an 80 on the ACT? It's only out of 36. Well, when they do that formula sheet and they find out, you know, you could say a student needs a 20, which is 80 points, but sometimes just to tell a student, look, you have to get 80 points, and however you add those together to get 80, it doesn't matter.
Right.
And so if you have a higher GPA, maybe you only need 74 of those points. So it slides. And it's not, we have to make sure people understand it's not a GPA, their total GPA. It is 16 core classes. And so somebody who knows that formula has to do that formula sheet with them, because to mess that up and give students the wrong so that's Division.
So why? Go ahead.
So Division 2 has just a definite bottom line where you have to get a 20. I'm sorry, you have to have a 2.0 GPA. And then to have around an 18 ACT.
Yeah. And so one of the things which the couple of messages that I just now got was asking that kind of led us to something me and you were talking about. When you have the ACT and you have the SAT, why is it that over the last, I know it's always started to trend that way, but especially over the last 3 to 4 years, there has been a higher, is there a downside to taking the SAT? Is there a future prediction that, you know, colleges are going to stop accepting the SAT? What is it? Why is, in your opinion, obviously?
So it froze a little bit. Let me make sure I understand the question. Why are more people turning to the ACT?
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, as somebody who preps for both, I can for sure tell you that the SAT is a tougher test. It is tougher. Now, you will hear rumors that it has no science. Well, that's not true. It's just mixed into all the other sections. You will hear, well, you get more time on the SAT. You do. Here's one example. The English SAT, you get 0.79 minutes a question. The ACT, you get 0.6 minutes. Now, I don't know if that's really a significant difference in time. If the questions are easier, then maybe you don't need that extra time. It really is kind of a geographic specific thing where in the Northeast, people are very SAT oriented. I think on the West Coast, people are very SAT oriented. Where I am in Texas, SAT was preferred until I taught at the local school and was quadrupling the number of kids that were taking the ACT because, quite frankly, they'll take either score. So if we have a more beatable test, then we should be taking that.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of brings me to my next thing. There's no state that doesn't allow one or the other. And like you said, which I'm convinced we can't find the answer why it's regional. But like, you know, it's very, very much regional based on the preference. But in that case, being that the ACT is limited to 12 times, but then the SAT is supposedly unlimited, but like you told me earlier, I think they take your last 6.
Yes.
And so in that case, it would behoove somebody who's in an early recruiting sport like softball or volleyball, and we don't talk about volleyball here, but I'm just kidding, in softball or volleyball, that it would behoove them to begin and take the ACT in the 7th or 8th grade. Obviously, you don't have to take the very next test, but get rid of the fear of the test, get used to the format of the test, get with, you know, whatever studying manner you're going to use, and then give it another shot, and then possibly go take the SAT, and then see which one you're faring better on,
yes,
and then focus on that. Correct?
Yes, absolutely.
As a college coach, I often found like if kids did better on one, they would do lesser on the other. Like it was vice versa. Like if you weren't strong in this one, then typically the ACT would be better for you and vice versa. That's what I came across.
Do you see that?
You know, I do, but the problem is sometimes, well, first of all, 3 years ago, the SAT English, it might have been 2 now. I lost track of my years, but 2 or 3 years ago, the SAT did a major revision, the SAT. And now their English sections are almost identical. So the ACT fired somebody and the SAT hired him. And the English test is nearly identical. There are some differences in layout, but in questions, they're nearly identical. Now, so that isn't maybe what, you know, that section doesn't set students apart. I think it's the math. The math is very different on them, and that seems to be what makes the distinction for students. So I don't know how long ago that was, Mandi, that you were coaching, but that could be what has happened, because that test changed within the last 2 or 3 years.
That makes total sense. Yeah. So in essence, just to summarize that, like, you agree with that's in truth, which has always been my recommendation, and obviously I've seen it work with the girls, but my thought is always anything rushed has too big of a frequency or too big of a percentage for error. And so my thought process is always start early, then allow adequate time to where if you're taking it at the beginning of your 8th grade year, and you take it and you're taking it once in February or once in December, but in between there you have a methodical plan to study for the ACT, but not overstress yourself about it. And then again, 6 to 9 to 12 months down the road, take it again to where you're still preparing, but it's not occupying a ton of your time and everything. That, by not making this, because they have school, they have softball, they have whatever other sport, they have lessons, they have travel ball, they have this, not letting that all of a sudden become what I remember, which our internet came on the floppy disk, and you plugged it in and you had 10 hours of AOL, but when I was in school and studying for the ACT, you went to Books A Million and got a Princeton review, and that was that. That was what you had. And I remember having to dedicate 2 hours a day, 7 days a week for weeks upon weeks, and still turn around going, oh, great, I got a 17. And so, I didn't have that problem. And so, preparing and allowing adequate time, you agree with that? Jen,
I didn't hear the question. I'm sorry.
Essentially just preparing and giving adequate time.
Right. Well, I think one mistake that parents make is, their kiddo takes September. We don't like that score. Okay, so they're going to take October. We don't like that score. Okay, well, they're going to take December. We don't like that score. And they're not doing anything in between. So when you said adequate preparation and methodical preparation, that has to happen for the score to change. So the thought that we're going to put the ACT book under our pillow and then poof, that my score is going to improve, that's not going to happen. So you need to pick when you test wisely, away game, 2 hours away, the night before the ACT, don't take that ACT. Oh, but they're a senior and there's only 2 more times left. Why did you do that to yourself? There's nothing wrong with taking it as a 9th grader just to see what happens. There are companies that will administer a practice ACT test. You can go to some big box tutoring companies and they will administer one to see where your child, what they would score.
I think we're all in agreement. It's like we would never put our kids on game day without having practiced or gone to lessons or done something. Yes, we understand, we're good enough in the sport, but recruiting is about these academics and these test scores, and you have to train just like you do sport.
Well, and the other
thing
is too, and I'm not trying to call anybody out, but that same money that you would spend to train your child athletically, whatever avenue you choose for your child to be academically trained, you should write that check with the same, okay, this is an investment. My child's going to.
So one of the
tons of options out there, that same,
one of the questions,
money has to go both ways.
one of the questions that was just asked on there, which actually Mandi had asked me the other day, when I was going through it, it seemed like a majority of schools took a super score. Nowadays, what I'm finding, and I'm curious to hear what you say, I'm finding that a lot of schools don't. Is there something that's changed? Why some schools take a super score and some schools don't?
Yeah, first, Jen, tell them what a supersetting is.
Yes. So some schools will call it stacking. Some schools will call it super scoring. But that's where you can take several administrations of a test, and maybe the first, and they'll take your highest score that you received, and that's the score you get for that section. So if I take, like I had a student, one of the NSR prospects with whom I worked, and the first time she took the test as like a freshman, she got a 32 on reading, and everything else was not a 32. We'll just leave it at that. And so the next time she took it, and we were so to average into. So they take your highest of each section, divide by 4, that's your super score.
And so, do you think there's a reason that less of
I would say the biggest percentage do not super score. And I'm not really sure why.
So, yeah, I guess it kind of bothers me because, I mean, being honest, I ended up taking it 4 times. And of course, I relate a lot of stuff to myself, but, I ended up taking it 4 times where I had varying different times where I did really good here and really poor here. I couldn't tell you why, but because at the time, University of Central Arkansas, go Bears, ended up, ended up taking a super score. Because of my super score, it appeared that I had a really good score, and I was able to get some money from it. If they would not have taken a super score, I would have been up the creek without a paddle and having to take intermediate classes on certain things. And so it intrigues me because I have several kids right now that's there's this school that turns around and goes, oh, with your this and this, and because of the stacking, you're going to end up getting this. Well, then at this next school, it's a total polar opposite. And so then when they're coming to me, hey, how come they don't and they do? I have the answers to most of it, but I can't tell you why they don't and they do.
I think it's an institutional decision.
Yeah.
Because coaching, I've always taken supersets at every school I've been at. So I don't know if it's institutional.
Which that particular kid kind of leads me into the next part. So like I know I've had tough I have some kids that do really good that way, but then I know like some of the kids we have right now that are doing the U-score stuff do really good, but they don't do good otherwise. Everybody knows, whether it's like Mandi talked about, one of the reasons Mandi was such a great coach and is now such a great scout is because she doesn't try to apply one principle to everybody that she works. She understands coaching the individual based on the individual. And from your stance, in the teaching perspective, that there's not just one way to teach. You have to teach per the individual. How is it, or is there a way to determine whether a kid will produce better or do better with tutoring versus, like we were talking about with the U-score stuff, being able to do the stuff on their own time and do it with, on their own time and in their bedroom or whatever. I've seen it happen both ways, and I've seen it be phenomenal both ways. So when people ask me, what's the difference? How do I know what's best for me? How do I answer that?
Well, I think some students just naturally need that accountability of a person that they have to show their work to or look in the eye, even if it is 200 miles away or 2,000 miles away, to say, I didn't do my work. Or they know they have to produce that for somebody, whether it's somebody at Huntington Learning Center or me or somebody else who does that work. Some students have to have that accountability because that online program is just going to be the last priority to them. That's one kid. There's another kind of kid that they like that self-pace. They can definitely commit the time to work, and maybe they have the skills that will allow them to format. So not everybody can learn from a video. For some, that's totally fine. There are, like somebody put about free online prep. There's free online prep that's available, and that will work for some people, but certainly not everybody.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes total sense.
Hold on
So,
just a second.
Jen,
I am.
I'm sorry.
He's got something going on. I don't know if he's sick
Okay.
or what, but
Okay.
he's gonna throw up.
Okay, I'll come. Thanks.
Jen, I'm on. If you can, please do me a favor and post in the comments as soon as we get off with your link and everything, to where, you know, those that are viewing can go get more information and everything else. And like I said, as always, you know, like me and you talked about, you know, I know y'all are both Bengal twin and 20s or whatever, but, you know, my sister from another mother, you know, and so I deeply appreciate everything that you do for the kids, and, you know, always having their best interest at heart. And, you know, I really, really, really appreciate you taking the time and rearranging your schedule to be on.
So, and I'll treat you to some Skyline chili at some point in time.
Oh my gosh, I miss it so much.
Thanks, we appreciate you.
I was absolutely happy to help, and any questions, send them my way.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Hold your hand once you get to the school. We want to, you know, coaches want to get the most and spend the least. So if it helps me to package academic money and my offer, that's a no-brainer. So it's everything. It goes beyond being good enough.
Well, and kind of what you said the other day, that the other cap to that is, please do not misinterpret anything we're saying about academics, in the sense that just because you have a 4.5 and a 33 on the ACT does not mean UCLA or Oklahoma is coming to call because you're a free ride. I know a lot of people, their first thought process is, yes, softball is an underfunded sport. Yes, being able to keep the coach from having to spend athletic money does end up playing in a favor. But make no mistake, that when the coach sends me a coach request, which I've probably got 20 on my phone from a text right now, they're not saying, hey, send me kids who have a 4.5 and a 30, I'll teach them how to play softball. I've never seen that one. What they're saying is, hey, I need a first baseman with a big stick, or hey, I need a catcher with a sub 1A pop, and I need this and this. And then some of them, I really need them to have this and this and this. That's one of the other big things that, as I'm going through all the coach requests, and me and Mandy are sitting there deciphering through, a lot of the coaches, you can tell, they'll tell me right off the bat, hey, don't send me anybody less than a 27. Hey, don't send me anybody less than this. Or like one of them, I can't remember the school from earlier, I think it was Sunny, wasn't it?
Yes.
That, you know, basically told me, hey, just so you know going in, before you send me a prospect, our average GPA for an incoming freshman is a 3.9, our average SAT was and it was a 29.
29 or something.
Yeah, average. So don't think that the talent or don't think that the increased academics is going to help them overlook the lack of talent. The talent, they're going to recruit the talent, but when it comes down to it, nobody watching this and nobody on the face of this earth is the God's gift to softball and is the only kid in this class in this position that can do what they can do. Period. There doesn't matter if you're the best 2023 pitcher in this state. There is 100 girls. Your academics ends up being that thing that puts the cherry on top. When it comes down to it, this girl's the same size, throws the same, misses the same bats, hits the same as you, has the same attitude. They love you both. This kid has a 3.5 and a 21. This kid has a 3.9 and a 30. Oh, yeah, you know what's going to happen. So don't think that the talent doesn't have to be, don't mistake that. Thank all of y'all for being on.
Yeah, thank you.
And Coach Mandi was actually getting started. And between Coach Mandi and myself, we'll make sure that we go through the comments and make sure that we go ahead and reply to y'all as needed. And like I said, if y'all do need something, always reach out to Coach Mandi or myself. We got a month and a half.
Yeah, we've got a lot of topics coming up. Shoot us your questions or things that you want us to talk about. Next show is going to be April 18th.
That's right.
Same time, same place.
Same mask. New mask.
New mask.
New mask. So, without further ado, we appreciate y'all, and we'll see y'all at the next turn.